Hello, everyone. You're very welcome on this very wet and dull afternoon here in the Midwest, but I'm hoping that the sun is shining wherever you are, and whatever happens, we'll manage to have a sunny conversation. Let's put it that way. My name is Margaret Keane, and I'm the Education Training Development Officer here at West ARIES. And for those of you who don't know us, we are the Recovery Education Service based here in the Midwest. So we cover in our face-to-face recovery education workshops Limerick, North Tipperary and Clare, but we're also available online, and I'm sure that's how a lot of you actually discovered us today. So let's get started. What are we going to be talking about today? Well, this is part of, as you know, we have a webinar every month in partnership with Mental Health Ireland. And actually, before I go on, I just want to give a shout out to Shane and the team at Mental Health Ireland for all the support they give us on the technical side in terms of the webinars. It's very much appreciated. So today what we're going to do is do what we always do, have a relaxed but hopefully interesting and maybe a little bit challenging conversation on journaling. And it's a very simple question. We may or may not come up with an answer at the end, but I think we'll have a good stab at it. And it's, can journaling help mental health? There's no doubt about it. We were just discussing, the panelists and myself, before we came on, how popular journaling has become. Because it is that easy access tool. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But again, I'll introduce you to the panelists in a second, but I have a little bit of housekeeping to do just to let you know what we're going to be doing today. So we're here for about an hour, and I hope you can stay with us. It will be it's conversational, so we do have some questions to get us started, but really we'd love to hear from yourselves. So if there are questions that you've got or insights on journaling on the topic, or something maybe that one of the panelists have said, you can contribute to the conversation through the Q&A button. Now, depending on where your little features are, your buttons are on your screen, it's on the bottom of mine. You'll see there's a Q&A button there. You just open that up and you can put your question or your insight there, and you can even decide to post anonymously as well. Our chat function today is disabled. We're doing everything through Q&A. And as I said, it is a panel discussion, but we're going to get going right from the get-go in terms of interaction with yourselves. So please do come in. So I think that's it. Oh, it's recorded. Absolutely. Yeah, that's important to mention. We do record all of our webinars, and they're available on our YouTube channel. And we also have them available then as a long form podcast on the Wellness Panel, which is available on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. So today I'm joined by, and I'll actually just ask them all to turn on their video so you can see how these lovely people who are with me today. I'm joined by Mike O'Neill, who is the manager here at West ARIES. I don't think Mike's, maybe he's missed one webinar, I don't know, but it's always great to have him and have his insight. And we're also joined by Miffy Hoad. Miffy's been with us before, I think on a couple of webinars before this. She's the development officer with Mental Health Ireland, and Miffy will explain what her role is shortly. We've also got Sylvia, who is Sylvia Kiely, who is one of our brilliant, and I do say that because, and I mean it, recovery education facilitators, who is out there every day delivering recovery education workshops across the Midwest and online. Great to have you, Sylvia. And finally, Sarah Danagher, who is the nurse specialist and the coordinator of the Recovery and Wellbeing program in the Acute Psychiatric Unit in University Hospital Limerick. So a lovely mix of people, different perspectives. And as usual, in terms of the panelists, any question that I put to you, respond, either from a personal or obviously a professional perspective. I think I've covered everything, and if I haven't, sure, it'll all come out in the wash as we go along. But let's start with those little introductions, and again, just say to the panelists, just give us a little flavour of who you are, what you do, your role, and in particular, what are you bringing to the conversation today, or what do you learn about journaling today? And we might start, Miffy, with yourself.
Thanks, Margaret. So I'm a development officer with Mental Health Ireland and have been for about 5 years, and was in Cavan and Monaghan and now Sligo and Leitrim. So as a development officer, our role is broad and varied, but it's primarily around building capacity in communities through promoting mental health and well-being through a variety of ways, through education, through, you know, workshops, information sessions, resources, and all of that, collaborating with community groups and so on any kind of a project or campaign that promotes mental health and well-being generally, to the whole population. So that's kind of, it's hard to say in a few lines what we do. Personally, then, I have a long-standing interest and passion about how we tick and what makes us tick. What's it all about, right? Why are we here? And so I have always been interested in my own personal development, and also then that has led me into a career of developing programs around personal development. One of those was and is the Wellbeing program, which ARIES Recovery College in North Dublin deliver. And it's a framework for promoting our well-being and recovery on a day-to-day basis. And one of the items, or one of the activities on that framework, is journaling, because it's just such a powerful thing to do. And I use it in my own personal life. I use it in my professional life. I use it for all sorts of reasons, and it's fantastic. So that's just so do we need to go on, because it's just brilliant?
That's perfect, Miffy. And actually, I think that's I'm going to actually come to Mike next, because I think that it's good, kind of, you know, that we'll have not the opposite, but yeah. Mike, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, Mike O'Neill is my name. I'm manager of West ARIES, and we offer a range of options. And one of those options is to support people in their, I suppose, mental health recovery. Yeah, and also I think at as a simpler level, just for people to enhance their well-being. And so we have something for everybody right across the community and across the service. And it's how do we accommodate them all. And I suppose the journaling is, yeah, it sells out, it books up, we put it up on Eventbrite, and it's one of our most popular offerings. And you know, so as manager, as part of our needs identification process and responding to what people need, but I suppose just for now, all I'll say is it doesn't work for me. And I think that's kind of, so this is just, you know, it's not the be all and end all, but as popular as it is, and I have to support that here in responding to the needs of our community here in the Midwest. But I'll speak about that later. Yeah,
and thanks, Mike. And thanks, Mike. And I think that's what's the beauty about having these conversations, is that we're coming at it all from different perspectives. And because there will be people that will be listening to this, or maybe watching it later on, and kind of having the same ideas. So hopefully by the end of this, they might be thinking, I might give it a try, but we'll see. Sylvia, we'll come to yourself next. Do you want to say hello? And again, just what you're bringing in terms of the journaling piece.
Thanks, Margaret. Hello, everybody. Delighted to be here. So I'm a recovery education facilitator with West ARIES, as Margaret said. And I suppose what I'm bringing today is from my own personal perspective and use of journaling. I suppose as an accessible tool, it has been for me on my journey, and to share that perspective today. Thanks, Margaret.
Thanks, Sylvia. And I'm dying to dig a little bit deeper into that, because I know journaling is really part of your self-care toolkit. I hope you don't mind me saying that, but just it is something that you're really passionate about. And finally, but by no means least, Sarah, if you want to say hello, and again, just from your perspective, the whole journaling piece, what does it mean to you?
Hi everyone, delighted to be here as well. Yeah, so thank you for the lovely introduction earlier. My name is Sarah, and I'm the clinical nurse specialist here in the APU. And I suppose my role is mainly coordinating and co-facilitating different groups and workshops here in the unit. And I suppose similarly to what the other panelists have expressed already, it's really trying to meet the individual needs and interests of many different people who we look after here, who are experiencing acute mental health challenges. And I suppose I have a particular interest in the journaling because I suppose similar to your experience in the great interest in the community setting, it's something something that we would also have experienced here in the clinical setting here in the hospital as well, where people have a keen interest in not only learning more about what journaling is all about, but how that it might be able to support them in their recovery. So it has really sparked great interest here as well. So looking forward to learning more myself on the panel today as well.
Absolutely, Sarah, and thanks. I know you are incredibly busy over there, so I know we've all got busy people here, but I know you particularly are over there. So thanks for making the time to come along today.
Delighted.
We really appreciate it. And I think why we really wanted you here is that link between clinical recovery and personal recovery and what that might look like when it comes to journaling. And we're obviously dipping our toes into the journaling workshop with yourselves there in terms of West ARIES. We deliver twice a week into both Ennis Acute Psychiatric Unit and in Limerick. So we are delighted. We've literally only started, so we're still at that learning piece. We piloted the first one, but I think it's fantastic that at least, you know, it's there as an option now, because I think people would maybe have a question mark of, you know, when people are very acutely unwell, do they have the capacity to be looking at those kind of tools? And the answer is yes, I think, but again, my own perspective. But anyway, that's all the introduction of the way, and I just want to thank you all for coming. But can we now just dig a little deep into that term journaling? Because again, and what's great is, as Mike has said, it's not for him, but it's not like West ARIES is not about individuals. It's about what people are asking for. And journaling has been something that came up in our creativity co-production. So we've been running journaling workshops for the last year. Mike already referenced the fact that it is probably one of the most, if not the most popular workshops that we run. This morning, for instance, we were out in Thurles Library, oversubscribed, which is always nice, but always difficult because people really want to get involved with it. And I think part of it that is, you know, we're giving people a practical tool that they can use and take away with them to hopefully improve their mental health, but also to maintain their recovery if they're in a recovery process. So, right, let's get down to it. That term journaling, what does it actually mean to you? I mean, again, when we were putting our journaling workshop together, we were kind of thinking, well, is it just the written word? Is it like the diary? Is it, you know, so I'd like to, if we can, explore the different areas and the different options of what journaling actually and practically is, if that's okay. So again, who'd like to come in first? Because I know this is one, if somebody's ready to go, Sylvia, I thought it might be yourself. Go for it.
I suppose, like I was saying, I'm coming from that personal perspective, and I would be someone that would use a mix of journal writing and paper journals, but also audio recording journals. And for me, it really is that way of capturing who I am and how I am. And in the paper journals, it's kind of like a paper mirror that I see it as. So that tool really to help me to express and to navigate, you know, what's going on in my life, different experiences. And it is, no matter, like you're saying, Margaret, there is different means and ways to journal, but it's very personal, it's very individual, and it's something that, you know, I do for myself and I'm not doing it for others. And also I find it provides that emotional catharsis and connection piece for myself as well. So thanks, Margaret.
I love that, a paper mirror to yourself. That's just a lovely analogy, is it? I don't know, descriptive, but it's certainly just, I'll tell you, I love taking away bits and like the who I am and what I am, and it gives you that reflective piece. It's so important. Anyone else want to come in on that in terms of the what? Miffy, go ahead.
Yeah, I think for me, just speaking personally and how I use journaling, it's anything I do that I write down on paper, and that can be a shopping list or a to-do list. And I love the, you know, mind mapping is another way I think of journaling, you know, and like, and so there's those things. There's the gratitude journal, there is the reflective journal, that, you know, and so it's anything where you're actually writing something down or capturing it in some way, because it could be using imagery, it could be, you know, a photographic journal, it could be, you know, that verbal piece, or, you know, recorded voice notes and all of that kind of stuff. We have so much technology now that supports all of this, which is great. But the actual act of writing things down, I mean, I have got to the shop and realized I left my shopping list on the table, but the very fact that I wrote the list means that I can recall it much easier, right? So there's something neurological that occurs when we write stuff down. And in all the research too, it shows that there is a whole biochemistry that occurs through journaling, and especially reflective journaling. So for me, journaling is about getting it out of the head and on paper, no matter what it is. Yeah.
So it's more about the process then, Miffy, rather than the end product, that the doing of it.
Yes. I do think though too, and maybe this is for later in the conversation, but what I have found with my own personal journaling, with writing stuff, especially with the kind of soul inquiry stuff I would use, reading it back at a later date is every bit as profound, probably more profound actually, the insights, and you kind of, or you see patterns, or you see, God, I wrote that in 6 different entries or something like that, and you kind of go, oh, okay, yeah, I might want to listen now, kind of thing. But you know, yeah, so it's, yeah,
and I can see that in terms of that self-knowledge piece, again going back to what Sylvia said, that reflective piece, it's that mirror to yourself. And and we'll dig a little bit deeper into that, those kind of benefits there of that, you know, looking back, what have I written, or how have I captured something. And thanks, Miffy. Sarah, might come to you next in terms of the journaling piece and what it practically means to you, and even from, you know, on the unit, what does it look like?
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose I very much agree with Sylvia and Miffy as well, you know, in terms of that, it being that reflective piece. And for me, when I hear the word journaling, I think of something purposeful, you know, like that kind of reflective thought that's kind of, intentional, I suppose, intentional reflective thought for me. And ultimately, I suppose it's about having, for me, you know, it's about having, I suppose, feeling safe to have that open, honest conversation with yourself. And for me, journaling is very much about, well, it's for me, they're my thoughts, my feelings, my emotions. And maybe, you know, in terms of trying to understand why, you know, things are a certain way, of course, or about, you know, or my feelings or thoughts around a specific event or an experience, absolutely. But I suppose for me, it's very much a space around, you know, like not having any judgment or not having loads of other, you know, people saying, well, do this or maybe do that, or that was right or that was wrong. It's just my own thoughts, my own ideas, or my own experiences around something. So it's that kind of space where you can just, I suppose, really kind of self-advocate for yourself. It's your own voice, your own thoughts, your own ideas, without any judgment, and just really being honest with yourself. But I know, and I suppose maybe we can dip into this later, but I think that does come with its own challenges as well, because it can be a hard space to be honest with yourself too, especially for people who haven't maybe done it before. But yeah, I think that's what the word conjures for me. And I suppose in terms of the word journaling, in my experience of how people are perceive it here, or when, you know, in the workshops when we're talking about journaling workshops, I suppose, I know you said as well, Margaret, it's early days in terms of rolling it out, and we're all learning and moving along together with it. But I would say, you know, most people will say, oh, so they it does spark a lot of interest, but it follows with a lot of questions about how does this look, or will I be able to do it? And I suppose a lot of, is this for me, and is it something I'm going to be able to do? So it comes with a lot of, I suppose, hesitancy from people as well. So I think, I suppose, in terms of our role in support and guiding people through, maybe being open to giving it a chance, and not ruling it out in the early stages, even if somebody is having, you know, experiencing some thought block, or maybe just having one of those difficult days, that, well, I wasn't able to journal, so maybe journaling isn't for me. But actually, that's okay. Maybe write about that in itself, or talk about that in itself, or draw about that in itself, whatever it is for you. So yeah, I think just emulating what the others in the panel have said, it's just embracing what it might, or what it could potentially mean for you, and what you feel most comfortable in doing, whether that be, talking into a recording device or writing or drawing or maybe just using one word or whatever it might mean. It's about doing what feels right for you as well. And I think that's one of the main messages we try and focus on here in the hospital setting.
Absolutely. And I think it's that personalized piece. And what came out for me in that, the safety piece, and the bravery as well of actually looking at yourself. That can be scary, particularly, wherever you are in terms of your mental health recovery. And the other thing that struck me there in terms of that description was the intentionality, of it, that it's, and I suppose it goes back, Miffy, to the mindfulness piece, that it is intentional. Mike, I think that's really interesting. That's why I wanted to kind of go right round back to yourself, because I think that was interesting what Sarah was saying around the safety piece and stuff, because I know that's something in terms of, so what does journaling mean to you and what's your feelings about it?
And I suppose it's kind of how do we all look at journaling? Is whatever you want it to be. So is it a problem solving tool? Is it, capturing your feelings? Making a list, and I suppose so it's the intention. So if I was to journal, for example, which I don't do, why would I journal and what would the purpose? Where does it lead to? So is it a reflective piece where I can look back on, that was in my head, a month ago, but then do I really want to know what was in my head a month ago? How does that benefit me now? Unless it's going to challenge my thinking. And I suppose I would have completed with the team here. We all done RAP 1. And at the time we were in lockdown and we did it online. And we had to submit to the RAP people, whoever they were, personal stuff. And I was really challenged in that. So even if you were physically doing it, and if somebody is assessing that you're completing RAP, there's an exposure in it and a risk. And I did not feel safe. And so that was 3 or 4 years ago. I completed RAP 1. I did RAP 2 training, but I hated every minute of it because I did not feel safe. And it's not about being judged. It's about that. It's just that exposure. My thoughts, my feelings, unless I share them, they are mine. And I suppose to look at different ways then of being creative. And it's something I always would have done. I don't do as much as I should, but painting. And I have a painting here in the office. And it was it was a 5-minute job with a palette knife. And so I'll show it to you here now. But in painting, so that's it. It's nice and small. It's a view from Fenor in County Clare, looking across at the Mamturks and the 12 Pins in Galway. And that was a sunset from a photograph. And you might look at those colours and say they are mad or exaggerated. But that's exactly what it looked. Those are colours, are the colours. Well, yes, while it's done with a knife, it's quite, I suppose, just go at it. But
and Mike, is that your kind of way of express? Is that the expression piece rather than the written piece?
When I would always capture it. So what do I, in every painting I do, there's a message to myself, and it's included in the sky. At that particular time, my head was on fire. And it was all over the place. So it was a communication to me that my head is in a strange place. But by just producing a painting, it's there. There's no judgment, there's no exposure, and there's no risk. But it's a communication to me where it's at. So I would have done other paintings, we say, and it had mad clouds, like a Van Gogh sky, that turbulence in it. And then I have other paintings where lovely, calm, soft, clear blue skies. And that's like a message to myself. That's where I want to be. I want that calm, So while people might look at it and say that's a lovely landscape, but to me it's a communication to me in it, and that's as near as I could get to journaling in a safe way. But there is there is an emotional piece in it and a communication piece in it.
Definitely, Mike. And I think that's really important to say as well, because look at, in terms of, there's all sorts to unpack there, you know, and I completely get that. And the wrap, for anybody who is not familiar with it, it's the Wellness Recovery Action Planning piece. And I can completely understand that in terms of the exposure. I suppose with journaling, you're supposed to write for yourself, but by writing it down, there is the risk that somebody else might read it. So I get that completely. So how do you offset that and just make sure that it's just for you? I have to say, just Mike is an amazing artist. That's just one thing. He can literally turn himself to anything. I've seen, you know, some of your artwork that looks like a photograph. Like, it's that kind of detail. And I think and I'd like to get that out there, because obviously people often just think about journaling as writing something down. And we'll talk about the barriers later, so I don't want to go into too much, but it is important that people understand that they can connect with those feelings in other ways, Mike, as you said, you know, a regular creative activity that allows you to have those reflective moments, I think, you know, can open people up. But you've actually given a nice segue there, Mike, into the benefits piece. Okay, so we you know, we're kind of all agreeable, I hope, and I think, so interrupt me if you think I've got it wrong, that journaling can be lots of different things, different ways, and it's about finding the right thing that works for you. So it may be written, it might be a word, and we all know there's tons of stuff like video journaling, audio journaling, bullet journaling, reflective journaling, gratitude journaling, there's scrapbooking, all of those things that, you know, you can kind of access it. So if we take that, what do you think are the benefits of that piece, of that reflective piece, for well-being, but also for mental health recovery? And I think Sarah as well, because obviously people in the unit are in their recovery for mental health and in some distress. So who would like to take that in terms of the benefits first? Miffy, great stuff. Thank you.
Yeah, I think there's something about actually taking the time first and foremost, because to journal, you have to get your pen and paper out, right, and sit down and attend to it. So that's the first piece. I think giving ourselves that time, and that in itself is a benefit. How much time you then spend is your own choice, but that is the first benefit. Then I suppose, depending on what form of journaling you're doing, if it's a reflective piece, and I'm just thinking now professionally. So I coach, I'm a life coach. I coach for personal growth and well-being, right? So after every session, I do a reflective journal on the session. And that isn't so much about how it was for the client. It's a reflective for how it was for me as a coach, right? And so that, you know, helps to fortify my skills as a coach. If I don't take the time to do that, that's fine. I'll still be a mediocre coach, but by doing that and taking that time, it really helps to support my coaching practice. It also helps me reflect on myself as a person in that space as a coach, right? And those personal insights. So there's that piece. But the benefits then in terms of personal journaling and reflective journaling and stuff, I think it really helps to build resilience, because when we take the time to reflect on something, even say, okay, this situation happened, or this conversation was had, or I did this or did that, or whatever it was, you know, what went well, what would I change, what would I do differently next time? Let's say those are the journaling prompts that we use to reflect on an event, right? That really helps to build resilience, because when we look back in a reflective way, not in a ruminating way, we learn. We're able to step back and look at it with a bit of perspective, right? And also look at it with this, I mean, in the coaching world, we call it appreciative inquiry. So we're looking at what's, you know, asking the questions with an appreciative approach, right? So as in, what went well rather than what went wrong, what did I do wrong, right? But what would I do differently next time is appreciative as well, because it's saying, okay, so it wasn't perfect, but here's what I've learned, right? So that reflective piece really helps to build resilience, because when we are able to assimilate that awareness through reflection, then the next time we encounter something similar, we are going to be able to draw on that awareness and maybe make those changes or not, but you know, the option is there for us. And so that for me is a very profound benefit that I've experienced in myself and witnessed in others.
So it's a learning tool, Miffy. It's something where we get greater self-awareness,
definitely
building resilience, I think, which is absolutely important. And actually just reminded me, we have here, in terms of for the group, we have a group reflective log, which is basically a journal. So after every workshop, the group comes together, and it's one that everybody can see. And then the facilitators do their own independent, for themselves, reflective logs themselves. It is built into what we do in much the same way. And I think for those very reasons, because it is a learning tool, and that we can reflect on how can we do things maybe a little bit different, maybe not necessarily better, but as I keep saying, I'm a great fan of failure-based learning. So
yeah. I'm reminded of and I can't remember which chef it was now. I was watching a documentary about, it's some years ago now, but it was following this chef and them developing menus and recipes and things, right? And that's what they did. They did a reflective journaling practice after trying these menus. Now I know we're talking about food and meals here, but you know, it's the same process, whether we're doing that or whether we're addressing something personal that's going on in our lives. It's that what it's doing internally around our awareness and catalyzing a memory as well around it, you know, of what we can remember for next time. So
thanks, Miffy. And I know Mike wants to come in there. Mike, do you want to come in on that? So benefits.
Yeah. And one of the benefits, and I suppose in simple terms, when you look at it, on the day we're born, we're fairly a blank slate and we're fairly clean. But along the way, we accumulate, some of us more than others, various knocks and challenges, and we can end up with major setbacks. We can end up mentally ill, and we can have a diagnosis. So when we look at the overall theme of recovery and well-being and recovery, where do we want to get? So for me, it's, and whether it's through journaling or through any other type of workshop or well-being program, we want to heal. And that's the outcome. So why do all of this? We're in the process of how can I heal? How can I heal myself? You know, and it's a combination of who else can help me heal myself. And so whether that's through treatments, talk therapies, and activities, and all of the different programs. And it is that thing of give it a go. What's the worst thing can happen? Doesn't work out, try something else. But I think it is that thing of just being determined, and and it's a line I often use, there's still a bit of fight in me, and if you have that little bit of fight, you'll keep going. But that's the whole idea for me of what are we doing, where are we going, and why we want to heal. Sylvia's our hand up there.
She has, Mike, and I just want to say that I think that's absolutely brilliant. It's that, it's the healing piece, that it's a tool that's accessible, that we can use to help heal ourselves. I love that. Sylvia, do you want to come in again? Benefits, don't you hear what you
the benefits, I mean, it's an exhaustive list, but I'm just reflecting there as well on what Miffy said about rumination and just focusing on that. I think like journaling can possibly help an individual to break away from that cycle of obsessive or rumination for a while. And like we mentioned, it does encourage and improve, self-awareness and can foster reflection. But even if you're not doing expressive writing or reflective writing, that place just to store some notes, one idea, one thought, it can free up some mental capacity, which is always, I think, a benefit. And in terms of, I suppose, gratitude journaling as well, even that, helps to draw attention to whatever aspects in your life that are making you feel blessed. So that in itself is kind of showing you, okay, what's good in life. I might be going through difficult things, but there's still something always good here. recording that and kind of becoming aware of that, you know, and being thankful for that too.
I love that, Sylvia, and the idea of freeing up some headspace and building your capacity by freeing up headspace. It's like, you know, as we always say here, too many tabs open in life on my laptop, all those things. That's close, close, close. And then you can breathe again. So I love that, Sylvia. Sarah, I'd like to come to you if that's okay. Again, on those benefits thing, and maybe, you know, even things that you've seen. I know I said it's early days of the acute unit, but obviously people want to do it. They want to try it because they're seeing something there that may help, as Mike said, in that healing process, that recovery process.
Absolutely. And I suppose I'm coming at it with, I suppose, you know, from what people are telling me on the unit in terms of what their experience of journaling has been, if they've engaged with it before or if it's completely new. And then also with my, I suppose, my nursing hat on as well, you know, talking about the benefits of journaling, you know, I think I saw read recently that it decreases blood pressure. So there's so many different benefits to it, both physically and mentally. But I suppose in terms of improving mood and building resilience as well, that Miffy is also spoken about. I suppose when people, for a lot of people who spend time here in the acute unit, you know, life has become extremely overwhelming. And you know, for some people who have started in the journaling or who've attended the workshop that ARIES have already co-facilitated here with us, on reflection, that they would say afterwards, like, you know, how did the workshop go and what did you find was helpful about it, or was it what you expected? And people used the word, it was like a pressure valve release, you know, that they think that actually it might be a way to just let go of a lot of thoughts, ideas that are going around, that are going on. Sometimes I suppose people don't have the words, they don't, they can't find the words, or maybe their thoughts or ideas are racing so much that the idea of journaling can potentially be a bit overwhelming. So it was lovely they felt it was lovely to actually think, actually, I don't actually have to write all these things down. There's other ways that I can express myself. There's other ways for me to process maybe the emotions or the anxiety they're experiencing. But I think as well, you know, for me, when I think about it, it kind of brings me full circle back to that CHIME acronym, which I know you've probably spoken about a lot of these workshops, you know, around connectivity, hope, empowerment, identity, meaning. And I think, you know, journaling is very empowering, and particularly for people here in the acute unit who may feel that they have lost a lot of control or feel very disempowered due to their experience or due to the nature of coming into a unit, whereby a lot of their choices, you know, may be limited in some regards in terms of, you know, what they want their treatment to be, or how, you know, how they see their recovery happening. And I suppose being able to engage in journaling in whatever way is meaningful to that person can be very empowering in terms of, you know, that exploring for themselves what they want their recovery to look like, what's important to themselves, important to them, what do they want to leave behind, what lessons do they want to bring forward. And I suppose depending on what stage of recovery a person is at in the acute unit, really informs that. So in the earlier stages, it might be very difficult, and people might need a lot of support in terms of, you know, taking, for example,
We just lost Sarah there for a moment, but oh, Sarah, you're right back. You're right in the middle of flow there. Did you want to just finish that, because it was just so good?
No, and I suppose really it's just to say that I feel that from people's feedback here in terms of if they have started to engage in journaling, whether it's something new or not new to them, it seems as though people really recognize the importance of being able to explore what there is driving their anxiety, what they're, I suppose, acknowledging the anxiety is present first, and that there is stress present, but more importantly, what might be driving that, or what might be triggering those things. And then it's kind of like that process then of self-discovery, and that's very empowering then in terms of regaining control, helping to prioritize, well, what are the main problems that I feel in my life are causing me distress. And I suppose that kind of lends itself then back to what Sylvia and if you were saying as well, in building resilience and learning from previous experiences. So yeah, I think that I suppose just to wrap up, that the benefits are endless, really, in terms of building resilience and improving your mood.
And that's fantastic to hear, Sarah, particularly in terms of, obviously with an acute unit setting, because people, obviously very unwell, but that this is a tool that's accessible to them there. Then a couple of things I just want to pull out, because again, it's bringing us to that next piece, which are the barriers. So it sounds like it's really beneficial. And again, not for everybody. We have to, we're great believers here in Midwest Areas, whatever you can kind of lean into yourself and what works for you. What might work for you today may not work for you tomorrow. That doesn't mean you have to throw it all out of the way. Maybe you revisit it, or you'd look at it in a different way. But it's really important, I think, that we look at that barrier piece. So I think there's one thing you said that just struck me there, was that, like, when people can't find the words. And that brings to me that idea of literacy, of people with poor literacy, that it may be difficult to find those words, or emotional literacy, to find out the words of how they're really feeling. They may be looking like they're angry, but they're actually sad, and all of those, and all that goes with it. So can we look at the barriers? What is stopping people from using this really simple tool, if it's that good, if there are these benefits? Who would like to come in on that first? Mike, I might come to you in terms of, oh, sorry, Miffy, are you ready to go? Yeah, I just want to come to you, Mike, because obviously I love about this is you're the grist, you're the one that's kind of, saying, well, maybe I'm not sure about journaling, but what are the barriers, do you think? Because I think you mentioned the kind of safety aspect of actually committing something to paper.
Yeah, and I suppose I've learned, how do I stay safe? I stay safe in here. So sometimes, so even if we're looking at, so the barrier may be, first of all, I may not have the I suppose, first of all, we don't need to confuse journaling with a diary. It's not about the written word. And if that's your starting point, you can journal in your head. You can journal your thoughts. You can journal even by speaking to yourself, or voice notes. But the barriers for me is where if you do like your risk assessment, so where does the risk lie? And for me, I will never get over the risk of, if I commit to paper.
I think you do commit to paper in a different way by those pictures. So
yes,
that's a meaningful
and that's
message
a
to
different way.
you.
So yeah, so how do you communicate to yourself what you need to process, and how do you stay safe in that? And that's the key piece. And once you're sure, so just give it a little bit of thought. And I don't want to be putting the frighteners on, because like some people might say, well, I don't have time, But again, I often use the thing that, like, there's 168 hours in a week. If you're sleeping 40 and you work 40, you're still left with about 70 odd hours, so there is time, so you often get that. But I think the thing is, I suppose, in the confusion, if you can plant the seed, people may not at a particular time, as Sarah said. And again, it's an assumption, because my experience of working with people, people who are in the acute unit is, people assume actually they wouldn't have the capacity, or they're not functioning, because I mean, from us delivering our workshops in there, I would see people they know exactly what's wrong, they know exactly why they're there, they're very clear on what their needs are. And I suppose sometimes it's about being ready, so so it's a bit like, that thing about you often talk about, like, the wheel of addiction. Once you get on it, you can't get off, because it's always in here. So it's that little bit of what's the intervention, that you will go into. But I think it starts with the thought and the thought process, and if you can figure out a way Because we say, what I do here in work, and there's a certain satisfaction in it, is I do up a to-do list. And I frighten myself at times, because if it goes over a page with 30 lines on it, I say, geez, I'm getting overwhelmed with work here. But there's a tremendous, I actually feel good when I get the highlighter pen and go across and go across and go across. And every
Mike,
time
this is the thing. I think you journal, you see. I think you actually do journal.
But that is an example of, just like Miffy was saying, the shopping list. So you've already had the thought. So the intention there is, I need to be clarified on what my work looks like. I'm using this to problem solve and prioritize what needs to be done. And then that little bit of reward and satisfaction of getting the highlighter pen and going across it. So in simple ways, even as a practice piece, the barriers, and well, I can't do that, or someone say, well, I'm out of work and I have no home. But for example, if you're in hospital, you can make a list for yourself where you can go at and say, my challenge, my to-do list is getting out of bed, having a shower, after I make my bed, getting dressed, brushing my teeth, and eating 3 meals a day. And then if someone made that simple list, and if people feel like getting a pen and drawing a line through, I've achieved these small steps, and that can then lead to planning for discharge. What do I need to do? To do a to-do list, and that satisfaction of building your own plan on what you need to do. So for me, well, I wouldn't call that journaling, I call it just doing my work, but it's a way of problem solving, about thinking it and getting it down on paper, because for me, a to-do list gives great clarity and can help prioritize what you, because otherwise, if I have 30 on the items on the to-do list and they're all in here, well, now it's a muddle.
And Mike, I actually do think, well, obviously it is, bullet journaling is just like that. It's all, it's all about listing. It's all about making to-do lists. It is, it is just that. And again, it's giving yourself clarity and closing some of those tabs. And I've seen those lists, and they are strike. And I can imagine the joy, and I get that myself. Just before I come to Miffy, and again, I'm mindful of the fact that we've just been kind of in the depths of the conversation. If anybody has any reflective pieces or questions, if you can get them in now, we're really in the end game at the moment. I'd say we've got about 10 minutes left of the actual discussion, and then we'll do a bit of signposting. So Miffy, we'll come to you in terms of barriers, and if you could kind of talk about as well the overcoming as well, so we can have light dark, and then we'll come to Sarah.
Yeah, so I think one of the barriers is, where do I start? And I think a to-do list is actually a really, really good way to start, actually, because they're bullets, and because you can tick them off, and that ticking them off, actually, you get a little shot of dopamine, which lifts your mood, right? And it's a positive sort of dopamine, not that, like, we have to get balance there, but anyway, that's a whole other discussion. But yeah, the where to start. So your to-do list could be a starting point, but also journaling prompts are a great way to overcome that. So just having a question that you want to journal, like, how am I today? Or maybe that could be too deep, what do I need today? And that might be, I need to make sure I ate my lunch, right? But that can be a way of just getting you started, a journaling prompt, a question, preferably something that's an appreciative question. So looking at, sort of what do I need? How can I get that need met, sort of thing. If you can start, if you're in the depths of the early stages of recovery, let's say, then it needs to be light, it needs to be bite size, and I think that's really useful. And then as time goes on, you can go into more deeper sort of journaling and spend longer doing it. I'd also suggest that, just like meditation, some mindfulness teachings, schools advocate, sitting for 45 minutes a day from the get-go. And for a lot of people, that's just too overwhelming. And it's the same with journaling. So like that, start small, just a few lines, and build and grow your capacity for journaling, because you're building a skill. It's a tool, it's a skill, and you can hone that skill. And I just want to add in one other piece, and that it's not so much about overcoming a barrier as such, although it is, and it depends, and it's using mindfulness in your journaling. So when we journal, there is the capacity to access our higher self, or our inner wisdom, or, you know, our sort of more subconscious self. And by journaling in a mindful way, so that you're not sort of scripting it before you write it, you're really writing one word at a time, and you're just letting each word emerge. And these sentences just form one word at a time. And if you can stick with one word at a time, you'll be amazed at what comes out, because you're accessing some other part of you that's not your critical analytic self that's going to go, who's going to read this, right? So it's and so by staying really present in each moment with each word, you'll find the page will fill with quite remarkable wisdom. So yeah, that's just a...
Thanks, Miffy. And actually, you just reminded me of, and it's so true in terms of that one word at a time, because again, how we start our journaling workshop, because a lot of people, they've never been to journaling, they don't know really what it is, and to get them over the hump and get them into it immediately, we always start with those little post-it notes, put them on the table and say, right, take one and write a word that's just coming into your head now. Write it. It could be a strength, it could be a memory of joy, or doodle. And we put them all up, and it's amazing. So, well, look, you've actually journaled there. That's what you've done. You've captured a moment, you've captured your thought. So it is about that starting small. Yeah.
Sorry, just because Sarah mentioned the CHIME framework, and it's a beautiful framework, and it's just so lovely, and applies to every single man, woman, and child, in my opinion. We all need all of those things in our lives to be well. And they're great journaling prompts. They're great creative prompts. You know, so CHIME as a framework. So just journaling, what does connectedness mean to me? You know, what is my identity? How do I perceive my identity? Whatever, right? So going through all of the pillars of CHIME as a journaling prompt can be very powerful. Yeah. I was just going to say that if writing about them doesn't work for you, use them as a visual art prompt, or poetry, or you know, but Mike was talking about art and how, you know, he can give a message to himself through the skies he paints. I think that's really powerful and beautiful. But equally, you know, you could draw images or paint pictures using the CHIME as a prompt. Yeah.
Brilliant, Miffy. And I think that's a really good idea. And again, CHIME, connectedness, hope, identity, meaning, and empowerment. If you want, it's freely available up there to have a look at. Most of our workshops are based on that framework anyway, where we dig into those questions. But brilliant idea there, Miffy. Sarah, I know you wanted to come in, and then Sylvia, I'll come to you finally on this one.
Hi, yeah, just wanted to throw in as well, just in terms of, I suppose, barriers to engage to starting journaling or to continue with it, and I think particularly in terms of here in the acute unit, I think, you know, people who are experiencing really high levels of anxiety or stress or worry, and I suppose with that comes, you know, people can find it really difficult to concentrate, or, you know, even to sit still for 5 minutes to actually do, you know, to start that drawing or to write those words, or to, you know, I suppose just to engage in it in any shape or form. People can really struggle with that, and it can be very overwhelming, and it can be really uncomfortable in terms of, I suppose, the mental energy that's required in order to do it. And sometimes I think people can put ourselves under a lot of pressure, you know, and we can kind of, I suppose, start this negative thinking pattern where, well, I won't be able to do that because I'm feeling too overwhelmed, or I'm feeling really tired, or I wouldn't know where to begin. And I think it's just to remind ourselves as well that, you know, doing it for 1 minute, 30 seconds, or even making a plan to do it, you know, maybe I could think about starting that in 2 weeks' time, or maybe after doing a workshop, maybe this is something I could maybe think about doing. So it mightn't even be the doing yet, but allowing it into your life in some shape or form, even as a consideration, is a really positive step. And I think as well, something that Miffy and Sylvia touched on as well, it's, you know, I think, you know, that negative thinking can make it really hard to engage in self-reflection as well, and ruminating on things like, I always do this, or why can't I ever do that? So I think having those prompts that the other panelists kind of, touched on, like, what was something nice that happened today? What did I see when I looked outside? It may not have to relate to a feeling or emotion. It may be just something that somebody has observed. Because I sometimes hear in the acute setting, there's a lot of talking and thinking about mood and feelings and emotions, and that can be exhausting in itself. So something it's and maybe just observing about what's going around us and writing about that brings people into the present moment as well, which can be nice, and it can be a nice starting point. Just a couple of ideas that came up.
I think that's a brilliant idea. I think, yeah, the capacity piece, it does feel like a big thing, and it is about bringing it right down. And I love the fact that you've mentioned that whole idea of, if you're always focused on the moods and the feelings, that in itself can be another burden. Whereas it's, and I will bring Mike into this, not I'm going to go to Sylvia next, but it's just something you always say that sits with me, Mike. It is the distraction piece. It's the mindlessness sometimes that can help, where you're literally just switching off, But anyway, I'm just going to go to Sylvia next. Now, I'm just mindful of the time, so we'll go to Sylvia, and then I'm going to just share some signposting slides, and then we'll all, say our final bits and pieces. Thanks, Sylvia.
Great, thanks, Margaret. Yeah, just in relation, Sarah, there you mentioned about negativity and capacity. And I think a barrier is that if someone does have that kind of strong, negativity bias, that there can be a risk of the journaling almost becoming like, an inventory of sorrow. And a barrier may be there around being able to engage with a more kind of, I suppose, a balanced emotional consistency, to remember, not to just journal and capture when we're struggling or in the dark, but to also record and capture when we're in a good place, and the good events, the good achievements. And I think another barrier may be it might not always be that cathartic release that we might think it will be, setting off to do it. Especially if you are revisiting, thoughts or emotions that have been avoided for a while. And it can be natural to feel upset or anxious and after writing, and a guilt might set in, thinking like, okay, I thought this would be good for me, but it's realizing that, okay, it is not easy, like that was mentioned here before, to stick with it a bit longer as well, in that, to give it time. And sometimes time is a commodity that many of us don't have to give to that. And the last one before we go is the gratitude diary. Recording what you feel grateful for every day, that can become monotonous. I know in my own personal journey it did, every day, and I felt it was enhancing a sense of guilt for me, where I struggled to think of 3 things I was grateful for in some days, and I just felt, look, this is too much, and I don't want these hard fast rules around it. So for me, I know keeping it to 1 thing a day, and then to also record 1 victory of the day. And even if that's too much, maybe just do like a look back on the week, 1 or 2 things you're grateful for in the whole week. So it is about overcoming those barriers. Sometimes the barriers, we are putting them on ourselves, but just to be gentle with yourself, and to give yourself time with it. And there's no
Sylvia,
hard fast rules.
I love that, and every time I talk to you about stuff like this, I just, you just give such beautiful phrases away, and they just drip from your mouth. But they just capture it. An inventory of sorrow, like, that's poetry, but it's meaningful, and it shouldn't be a burden. If anything's a burden when you're trying to deal with your own mental health, well, then it's not right. Change focus maybe. I know, Miffy, that you want to get in there. I'm mindful of the time. If there's anything you can share in the chat for everybody, that would be great. But I want to just share, I don't want people to leave without the signposting piece, because I think it's important. But I will get an opportunity to come back to all of you and just get your final thoughts. Again, very quickly, just to say that obviously we are a recovery education service. We've referenced it a few times today. We are all over the place in March. We're online, but we're also in the Hunt Museum. March, April, we have a series on creativity for wellbeing that we partner with the Hunt Museum. It's absolutely a lovely workshop. We look at the kind of conceptual piece around creativity for wellbeing and talk about barriers too, and then the people who attend go to get the opportunity to do a bit of practical elements, everything from repousse work to wreath making and total beginner stuff. But it's a lovely workshop. Again, it's just to give you an idea of where we are. We're in hospital, we're in Thurles, we're in, let me see there, we're in Foynes Library, right across the Midwest. Again, you'll see we're in Journaling for Wellbeing, one of our big ones in Foynes again. We're also in, and I need to just move this out of the way so you can see, we're in Roscrea, which we're delighted to be back. We haven't been there for a while, and Kilmallock Library. So there, you can find all of our events on Eventbrite. I wanted to give you this, and anybody who signed up for this will be sending out these slides anyway, so you'll have the links. But Miffy has some recommendations there around, getting you started, because again, we've already mentioned that can be a barrier in itself. So there's information there on the benefits of journaling. There's a link there, how journaling can help during hard times, and 64 journaling prompts to get you started. And also, just to reference, there is a fantastic, beautiful book called Creativity for Wellbeing. It's a workbook, but there are, I think, some prompts in there, and Miffy was very instrumental in getting that off the ground. And finally, next month, Claire Flynn, who is our development officer here in the Midwest for Mental Health Ireland, will be in this chair hosting another webinar. Look for details on that on Eventbrite, and we'll be sending those details, I'd say, over the next couple of weeks, and then you can find us online. We will have this recording available on the Wellness Panel, which is our long form podcast, and people love to listen there when you're going out for your walk, and yeah, share it with whoever you need to. Now, I just want to, again, mindful of the time, we've just hit 3. So if you can just briefly with our goodbyes and any additional signposting. So I'll just come very quickly, Mike, to you, and I'm just, as I go across the screen. So Mike, if you can just say your goodbyes and any reflective piece.
Yeah, and I suppose for me, it's just kind of, if I would say there's a takeaway, everybody journals in some format, somehow or another, whether they realize it or not. And when that could be like doing the shopping list or keeping it simple as anything. And as I always say, when it comes to mental health recovery and well-being, if you're unsure of something, I'll always say, ask yourself, is this helping? And if it's helping, well, then do it, and it doesn't matter what that looks like, so whether it's journaling or any other thing that is enhancing your well-being, and that's up for me, is always the check-in. If it's helping, keep going. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thanks, Mike. Miffy, we'll come to you next. And again, thank you so much for all the insights today, to yourself and Mike.
Yeah, I think keep it simple. Keep it to what you're able for at any given time, and that's going to change day to day and sometimes from one end of the day to the next. So just keep it simple. Perfect.
And brilliant. Now Sarah, we'll come to yourself. Sorry, I'm just checking the Q&A there because we've got some responses.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I think I really enjoyed today's session. I've actually learned a lot myself, and I think that my takeaway for today is very much that there are so many different ways that you can give it a go, and just try small and set even just 2 minutes aside, and keep going if it's something that's of interest to you. Just keep trying for short periods, and settle on something that feels right for you, and not to rule it out maybe after 1 or 2 times. Maybe say I'm going to give it a few weeks and then decide after that, because it does take a while for things to settle and to kind of find your groove. So I would say it's really about doing what works best for you.
Great stuff, Sylvia, or Sarah. And Sylvia, we'll just come to you to say your goodbye, and then I'll just go to the Q&A just to answer a couple of questions quickly.
Thanks, Margaret. Yeah, I just wanted to say goodbye, and thanks for the wonderful insights today on the workshop. And yeah, just to echo Miffy and Sarah, be gentle, start small and go from there. And just to share, because we were delivering these workshops in the community, and one of the feedback that came back on the journaling workshop in particular was a comment saying, I did not realize until after this workshop all the different ways that journaling can be done. So it's having that open mind as well, to finding out the knowledge, to finding out the different ways and finding what suits you. So thanks.
Brilliant,
everyone.
Sylvia. And it is all about openness. And I think that's what we had here today. And I just want to thank every single one of you for just being open to the discussion in the first place, and being respectful of different views as well. it's just brilliant. And I hope our attendees got something from it. Just got a couple of things I just want to answer just very briefly. We do have, obviously, an event. Somebody there is online from the UK. We do have online workshops, certainly in the last couple of months, because just people have asked us. We are very much face-to-face, but there are 3 workshops online in March. And also, I just want to say a big thank you to somebody there who's just put in, thank you very much sincerely for profound, meaningful enlightenment. God bless you all abundantly, and right back at you. And thank you so much. So I think we're just about done. Mike has been very good, and he's helped me enormously by putting the feedback form into the chat area. We live or die by our feedback. It just helps us to get things, I suppose, as I said, failure-based learning, always looking for new ways that we can make things maybe a little bit different, a little bit better. So we'd really love to hear from you in terms of what you liked about today, or maybe what things that you think we could do a little bit better. That's fine too. Completely anonymous, and it's only a couple of minutes. We have gone 5 minutes over, and I am so happy that you all stayed with us. It means that the conversation was going, and I hope that wish you well on your own journey. As everybody has basically said, sure, give it a go. That's all you can do, and see what works for you, and keep at it. Somebody's asked there, yes, we will have this on our YouTube channel. We get a lot of visits on our webinars, so you'll also get the link of the recording as well. So I think that's it. Bye to everyone. Have a lovely afternoon. Thanks for sticking with us, and we'll see you all again next month, hopefully. Take care now. Bye-bye.